which includes, sorry, there's a webinar has started. Great. Our advisory committee includes the Kenyan Ministries of Health and of Water and Sanitation, the Water Sector Trust Fund, Nairobi City County, Nairobi Water, which is the utility, and WASREB, the regulator. And they create the vision and the roadmap for government contracting, where we hope this leads us, and identify opportunities to channel funding to RBF from the government. 1 year in, we're excited that we have exceeded our targets for 2 of the 3 outcomes and come quite close on the 3rd, and have a lot of learning that we are able to bring with us as we proceed to continue along our journey. And as I said, we want our RBF experience certainly to get us where we want to go, and also to provide something of a blueprint for others. But I think the one message I want to make sure comes through is that the gap is the problem, right? The gap between what it costs to provide this service and what users can and should be paying is the challenge. And in our case, results-based financing is a solution, because it is a way that we think we can get to government covering that gap. But as we talked in preparation for this session, we really don't want the takeaway to be that RBF is magic and it will make everything work, but rather that this is a way that we've come up with to address this gap. And so please don't walk away with the message that RBF is magic. I'll stop saying it, so that's not the message you take away. And I want to thank you for your time. I'm going to head on over to Haiti to stick with the sanitation, and Sasha's going to join us to present. Lena, I think maybe you can come pull up the slides.
While she's pulling them up, I have one more stand up, sit down. Everybody stand up for a second. How many folks in this room, when you came out of high school, you knew you wanted to go into WASH? Stay standing if you knew you wanted to go into WASH. Hey, look at that. Wow, Maya. I got a good research director there.
Got another?
Does anyone have another?
You're good.
Hey. All right. I now need to do the thing where, can I see my notes better with glasses on or off? On is the answer.
On it is.
All right. Hello, everyone. My name is Sasha Kramer, and I'm the co-founder and executive director of Soil, which is currently the only safely managed sanitation provider in Haiti. Soil has been working in Haiti since 2006 to design and implement sanitation services which can address the dual challenges of open defecation in urban areas and the lack of safe waste management along the sanitation chain. Soil first designed a household container-based toilet in 2009, and this week, just a few days ago, we hit a very exciting milestone for us, which is 4,000 customers subscribed to our service. We really wanted to hit it before this presentation. The way that the service works is that households pay $265 US per month, and with that, they get a urine diversion toilet that's locally made, a professional waste collection service, and cover material to flush the toilets. Once we pick up the waste from the households in the little 3-wheeled poop mobiles, we transfer them to the Big Daddy poop mobile there, and then we take it out to our composting site where we treat the waste using thermophilic composting, and then sell it to local farmers and reforestation projects. Soil's full-cycle approach to sanitation means that we can actually collect revenues at both ends of the sanitation chain, both through monthly user fees from toilet customers and one-off compost sales on the other end. And I think it was around 2014, 2015 that the sector started to get very excited about market-based approaches to WASH. And so we thought, oh, well, we can do this with our revenues on both ends and economies of scale. will be self-financing in 5 to 10 years. And we rode that wave for a year or two as we really dug into our costs. And then we really dug into our costs and we said, uh-oh, there's a pretty big gap there. And even with economies of scale, we are not going to be able to fill this gap. And then as we learned more about how sanitation worked around the globe, we realized it was incredibly unfair to assume that families living in some of the most vulnerable contexts in the world would pay the full cost of something that is heavily subsidized in wealthier communities. So having a toilet in your home, a household toilet, could be considered a private good. It's debatable, but it could be considered a private good. And people are willing to pay to have that. But as soon as the waste leaves your house, it becomes a public health risk. And there needs to be a public sector solution and public financing to cover that. So I'll be interested to hear afterwards. I feel like I go back and forth with the way FreshLife presents it and the way Soil presents it, and I want your feedback of, are they both comprehensible? Do we need to adopt one or the other? Don't worry, you can't see everything yet. Makes no sense yet. So this is our strategic vision. And when we were first doing the early stages of innovation and growth, the gap between earned revenue from customers and our operating costs was completely covered by activity-based financing from private philanthropy. But as we've grown, we've begun to shift towards results-based financing, and I want to thank Ruthie for doing a lot of the heavy lifting for me so I can keep mine shorter. But we wanted to do results-based financing to be more accountable, to more efficiently use increasingly scarce resources. And as Ruthie said, to build a model that made it easier for the Haitian government to come in with the backing of institutional donors and fund us. Ultimately, we're working towards securing a long-term contract with Haiti's Sanitation Authority to integrate CBS into national planning as a tool for eliminating open defecation. And because time is short, I'm going to skip right over the first 2 years of results-based financing we did. You can ask me after. And I'm going to take us to where we are now, which is here. In April, we started our second phase of a results-based financing collaboration. And we are very excited that within this collaboration, we have 4 private philanthropic foundations that are paying for outcomes. We have our very first repayable loan, terrifying. And we also, in a really, the most exciting, I mean, I could basically retire tomorrow, because just before, an hour before this talk, I got the contract, our first public sector contract from the government of Haiti. And they are right. So you won't be seeing me again. And they're going to be covering 33% of the outcomes costs, or the costs of 1,420 households over a 2-year period. Like FreshLife, and very like FreshLife, same graph, we chose very simple and quantifiable indicators. So number of toilets installed, total users on the surface, and a premium bonus of an earned income match at the end of the contract. And now I want to bring us back to what this session is about, which is the importance of understanding and really transparently sharing our costs. And thanks to the amazing work of Barbara here, Ruthie, Lena, so many people in this room, we were able to use the Cactus methodology to roughly compare the costs of container-based sanitation to traditional sanitation technologies. And what you can see is, regardless of what technology you're using, the total annualized costs per household per year are in a range of $400 to $700 per household. And at our current scale, thankfully, Soil is coming right in at that range at about $30 per household per month. And what you see here, the blue is earned revenue, the green is our costs. And before the second phase of results-based financing, we were covering about 15% of our costs with earned revenue. The way that we tried to set the price per outcome was to cover that gap. And I'm so excited to show that for the first time in Soil's 20-year history, we are actually having revenues some months that exceed our costs. And the reason for that is that we set the cost at $21 per household per month. We were able to negotiate that with all of the stakeholders. And it's so important to have this as a starting point so that particularly the Haitian government can know the costs and also see how they change over time. So the key takeaways that I have are, as cities grow more quickly than infrastructure, equitable provision of safely managed sanitation at a citywide scale will require ongoing operational financing from the public sector. I feel like the sector has finally come to a place where I can say that and people don't go, oh! And it's impossible to do public contracting without having a firm understanding of your costs. And results-based financing seems to be, thus far, an excellent tool for doing that. So it's magic. Just kidding. I want to thank you all, and I'm going to turn it over to the water folks now.
As we're moving over into water, I will share that as we were preparing, you might get the sense that Sasha and I are a little talkative. And after lots of discussion, Mikhail just said, you keep talking about like sanitation service provision, and could we get the word water in there? And Sasha just said, like, I think that's the first time that's ever happened. So as we move into water, just know that we put sanitation first. We're glad we got our chance. There you go.
There we go. I know the legs. All right, mine is not there, so we're gonna have to open it again.
Stand up very quickly, everyone. Stand up one more time. This is how we keep it going. Keep it going. So, how many people in this room work on sanitation?
Remain standing.
Remain standing if you're the sanitation folks.
Oh yeah, looking good.
All right, thanks folks. Cool. We got a lot of us here. I like that. That was it. Are we good? Oh,
We are almost ready.
we're almost ready.
Everybody stand up.
Okay.
Yeah, just one more for now. Remain standing if you work on water.
There it is.
If you work
Yeah,
on,
well, I got in trouble for
oh,
leaving
if
them
you work on
out.
water, stay standing.
Yeah, remain standing if you work on. Oh, that's pretty cool. Have to stand.
Maybe we should ask who's working on IT.
And who's a comedian?
Okay, we are ready.
There we go.
I got everybody else's ready for them, but mine. Okay.
Well, thank you.
Thank you for your patience.
Yes.
I'm Kate Sankata. I'm the Executive Director and Co-Founder of Saha Global. Saha is a nonprofit service provider that provides reliable water service to last mile communities in Ghana. So these are typically rural villages that have less than 1,000 people living in them, and for those reasons are often not a great fit for piped water services. So our water systems are specifically tailored to meet their needs. And to do that, we have two service models that we employ. We have a surface water treatment model that reaches communities that don't have accessible groundwater, which is a big problem in northern and Savannah region Ghana and is really the majority of our current customers. We also offer a professional borehole maintenance model that we're rolling out now so that we can serve any last mile customer regardless of their water source. So our mission is to really serve, to not just deliver a professional, reliable water service to these last mile customers, but also prove that it can be done, to be able to show the water sector to service authorities and also to other service providers that you can provide a utility grade service to hard to reach communities. So we're currently we're managing about 470 water points through 5 regions of Ghana that reach 140,000 people right now. So what I'm excited to talk about today for the first time are the results from this project we did this year that we called our True Cost Project. And the goal of this was to really move the conversation around the water financing gap from just being about CapEx and the cost to expand access to everybody to the cost to sustain those services, to talk about what's this recurring OpEx cost for reliable service delivery. Now in Ghana, this is incredibly important because the rural water sector has been undergoing these reforms for a very long time. We are essentially unregulated in the rural sector right now, and people are being served by a number of different, mostly private providers, either nonprofit or social enterprises, also some government. And so there's really no data out there about what does it cost to provide reliable water service to rural customers in Ghana. So we were hoping to be able to figure that out and to identify some efficiencies that we could achieve if we didn't have such a siloed approach in rural water delivery in Ghana. Like Saha is focused on the last mile. Other providers are serving towns of 1,000 to 5,000 people. Someone else is serving towns of 5,000 to 15,000. And then we wanted to share those results widely. Unfortunately, we weren't able to get the financial information we needed from the other rural water service providers. So we pivoted and we said, okay, let's just look at the last mile. That's who Saha serves. We can use our own financial information to really try and quantify what that recurring OpEx cost would be to serve everybody. If we imagine a world where we have achieved SDG 6, everybody has access. How do we keep that water flowing? What is that going to cost? And we're here to share those results widely. So what did we do? We brought in an independent financial analyst to help us with this. Nat Paintner is here. He had a team, Philip Deal, helping him with this. And we just gave them our 2024 P&L. We said, here it all is. This is our revenue. These are all of our costs. And we worked together to categorize those costs. But I found that this was really important that we had someone outside of the Saha team that was doing this work. It really held us accountable. It's so easy when you're in this to say, but in 10 years from now, like this is gonna be so much lower because we're gonna achieve these economies of scale. We really wanted to anchor this in actuals. Saha has been operating for 16 years. We have 140,000 customers. And when we serve everyone, of course we'll have some efficiencies, but we really gotta be realistic about what it's costing us right now to serve those people. And then we partnered with Aquia to help us figure out how many people in Ghana live in last mile communities. We have a ton of information where we work that we've gathered ourselves, but we needed national data, and Aquia was really uniquely positioned to have access to this data in Ghana, and it was really helpful and exciting to work with them. Our final report's going to be out next quarter because we want to include 2025 data in there as well. We're almost at the end of the year, so why now? So what did we learn? There's over 19,000 what we consider last mile communities in Ghana that are small remote villages that are dispersed, and that represents 4 million customers. This is not a small number. This is almost 10% of Ghana's population are living in these communities that are not well served by pipe systems anytime in the near future. And when we leave them out of conversations, we're leaving out a huge portion of the population and a huge portion of the cost. These are arguably the most expensive customers to provide water to. If we don't talk about their costs, we're really going to underestimate those long-term service costs. So what did we find? We came at this from two ways. One was fully anchored in our actuals. As I mentioned, most of our customers right now, we have to do surface water treatment for them. This is more expensive than our groundwater model. So if we assume all 4 million of these last mile customers use our surface water treatment model, that's going to cost $24 million a year. But we do know that that's not the best model for most of these customers. Most people in Ghana do have accessible groundwater, so we looked at what's our current footprint of surface water customers, and then assume that most of these other 4 million customers are better served by a preventative maintenance model. They do have accessible boreholes. And when you look at that cost, it's about $11 million per year to reach everybody with a reliable service that could last forever. Now, both of these models do have some revenue. We earn about, if we serve 4 million customers with our surface water model, we'd earn about $80,000 of revenue. And if we do that second version, that's mostly groundwater, we earn about $1 million of revenue. And so that leaves this $10 million deficit. Now, it's important to note that this includes costs like depreciation. This includes our management and admin costs. And those are real and they affect the numbers a lot. And you can see, we won't get into all of these details, why it might be tempting to exclude them. Because if you take out depreciation and interest and taxes and admin costs, you could get that deficit down to $400,000, but you will not have reliable water services. Those technologies are going to break down, you are going to need to replace them, and so you really need to include the real cost of reliable service. And that's really our recommendation, is that the government of Ghana could use RBF to contract last mile service providers using $10 million per year to help make up that gap between what we can collect from customers and the cost to serve them. There's also all sorts of ways that we can reduce that cost, that we can increase revenue. We are very excited to be doing that, and hopefully that number will get down, but we want to be out here talking about where it is now. I also wanted to briefly note that, like our colleagues, that gap right now is funded mostly by philanthropy, and that comes with a cost as well. If you're going to raise money from donors, you have to spend money to do that. You need teams that are writing grant applications and reporting. For us in 2024, we spent about $200,000 and raised about $6 million. And that scales as well. And so if you're going to continue to have philanthropy fill that gap instead of government, we have to start talking about the cost that that introduces to the system as well. That was not in that $10 million. And I wish that there were other service providers out there talking about it. Donor money is not free, and it adds an inefficiency to this greater system of rural water provision. So what I'm hoping we take away from this is that these long-term costs, they have to be understood, they have to be baked in from the beginning of any new infrastructure project. And RBF is an amazing way that we could deliver these types of payments in a way that ensures reliable services and performance. But we have to start anchoring what those payments are in the true cost to provide a service that would qualify for our payment. And if we are just basing our RBF pilots on the budgets for those pilots, we risk scaling a program that is still going to fall short of covering cost. So we have to start talking about true cost. And we have to be the ones to do that. Thank you, everyone.
I have no stand-up question. Thank you, that's too late. And you don't have to wait. Fantastic. Okay. Good afternoon, everybody.
Good afternoon.
I am Michael Dupuy, and I am the Deputy Director of Uduma, and I'm going to present today something that doesn't sound very attractive, but is really very exciting. You will see. It's a profitability analysis. It's about rural water services in West Africa. So I've seen many familiar faces, so that might be repeating myself, but okay, Uduma is a private water utility. We operate in a rural context, and we work in 4 different countries in West Africa, Mali, Burkina, Côte d'Ivoire, and Benin. We supply about 1.5 million people as of today, and we work under 10 to 15 years delegation contract with governments. This is important because it pushes us to have an approach that is area-focused, where the idea is being able to serve everybody within one area. And that does translate into the fact that we work with any type of infrastructure that we would find in that area, which goes from large water pipe systems up to 10,000 people, medium-sized solar kiosk-type medium-sized infrastructure, and of course the smallest one being the hand pump. The model is based on O&M schemes that we provide to supply services at minimum standard. It would be quality, it would be uptime, and in return, people have to pay for the service. The price of this service, I don't give you all the figures, but the result, it's about $2 per year per person. So it's very affordable for the users, but very challenging for the operators to be financially viable. So I am going to share here a study, feasibility study, that was conducted by Open Capital, which is a financial auditing firm. Thanks to the support of Vitol, it was supported by, it was financed by USAID at the time. And thanks to Osprey, it has produced an official report that was made public and has been presented in several events, and the last one being Afwasa in Kampala a couple of months ago. So it is focusing on two countries, Burkina and Mali, which are quite similar, neighboring countries in Sahelian area. And as you can see, the scope, the people, and the contract are similar. But where it becomes very different is that Burkina is only dealing with large water pipe systems, while Mali was dealing with smaller infrastructures, medium-sized solar systems, and hand pumps. And these translate into a much lower consumption, which translate here, since we are in the finance part of it, in the revenue. And if you see the revenue per customer, you see that Mali has a revenue that is 5 times less than Burkina, because Burkina is on large water pipe systems. But before we dig into the result, there are 3 definitions. You have been through them without explaining them. You should have done that.
You should have gone first.
Well, I don't know what is the level. Louis, probably not for you, but gross margin, EBITDA margin, and net operating margin. It's important to understand them because they reflect 2 different things that allows to understand better how you work and what are the problems financially, or what are the possible areas of growth. Basically, you have the total revenue that comes, in our case, from the people paying, and thanks to the support of Uptime, we also had result-based funding in both countries. You have, and in front of that, you have the cost, of course, and these costs are divided in 2. You have the direct cost and the indirect cost. Direct costs, as per the definition, are related to your operations, active operations. People go in the field, you pay for the energy, for the pumping, and so on. Indirect cost, let's make it simple, your office, admin, legal, whatever. And so the gross margin is the difference between your revenue and your direct cost. So it's basically giving you the efficiency of only your operation. Are they efficient? The second one, the EBITDA margin, considers both costs, direct and indirect. So it would be then the efficiency of your activity, like of your company, including your office. And this is important to separate the 2 because it gives you an idea of the scale, economies of scale. Are your operations good enough, large enough to cover your cost of your office? And the last one, net operating margin, considers the financial cost. Have you been injecting capital, investing capital, and what is the cost of it? Because capital in the real world is not for free. So now is the result of the study. So it is Burkina Faso, so reminder, large water pipe systems under result-based finance. Fantastically positive. But if we dig a bit deeper, without the result-based finance, we see that the efficiency of the operations are good, but the results are not. What is it telling us? That the size or the volume of operation are not big enough to cover the cost of the office. Yeah. And the other thing we can see is that the difference between EBITDA and net profit margin tells us that the investment capital cost was limited. So basically what has happened in Burkina, we used to be 3 years in a row positive after many years of getting there, but there was the security issue. They have been attacking the north of the country, affecting the biggest, more profitable water pipe systems. So we went back to a situation where we were not profitable anymore. Thanks to RBF, it has been helping us to hold it up to now. And this study was also with the objective of letting us know what we have to do to get there. One of the results was the large networks are profitable. These are the best economics. So we had to go optimize the cost and trying to increase the volume of consumption to get back to financial viability. In Mali, small, medium size, completely different. Whatever the case, whatever the infrastructure, everything is really negative. Heavy losses, loss making. And the other thing we can point, as you can see, the net operating margin is now far behind. What does it mean? There was co-investment on that one. We had invested on the CapEx. Basically, we took a loan to invest in the CapEx. So this is what you have to deal with. So in Mali, basically, we had to work on all possible ways to get that service running and to get it as fast as possible back to viable financial situation. So it meant working on cost saving, putting scale, but in a smart way, large network that would be more profitable to be introduced in the area, and of course continue the result-based funding. All this to say, and I will only read the first line. It is very challenging to work in those contexts. But if you have the right mix of services, infrastructure, it can drive profitability. But in many cases, as we have seen, finance is still needed. All those slides were untouched from the OCA presentation. This is my slide. So the question is financial viability the way to have sustainable services? Of course, 100%. I mean, I am convinced, and many are. But there are conditions. In our case, as area-based approach again, because we want to be able to serve everybody, cross-subsidy mechanism is really key between the profitable and unprofitable ones. But still, in many cases, it remains challenging. So operating subsidies are necessary. But now, I hope we all agree that this is not it. We have to go at scale. It's not only to make it sustainable, but sustainable at scale. And for it to happen, we need the government to step in. We need the government to buy in. We need the government to endorse it. And the best way to do it, it has been said, is to have the real cost, the right cost, so they get to know. I forgot something. This is getting worse when you have CapEx being invested, okay? And the last thing is only to implementers, to operators in the room, just a little advice. Invest into financial analysis. It helps you to optimize your efficiency because you understand how it works. And it gives you the necessary credibility to get the numbers right, especially for the government. Because what you want is not to have these numbers to be in the line of the next budget of your next proposal. You want it to be in the line of the next budget of the ministry of the country where you're operating.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thanks so much. Great. Thank you to our presenters, including myself. And I now get to invite up Barbara Evans, who is wonderful in many ways and is totally who you want to moderate a panel because she makes the panelists look good. So that's why we picked her. Maybe we can take down this slide, but I'll invite the presenters to come back up here. And Barbara's going to kick us off and then take questions from the room. And we've got a good chunk of time to be in discussion now that we've gone through those presentations.
I mean, I feel like if anyone has a stand up, sit down.
No,
you
no,
can just
I'm
throw
going to
it.
do it. I'm going to make your life hell. She told me not to do this one. You can all stand up.
She told me to.
Okay, so stay standing up if you own a jersey of your favourite football team, basketball team, baseball team, or sports team of any kind. Yeah, I see that's always 50-50. I find that one really interesting. Okay, who am I going to pick on? Who here is British? There must be a British person in this room standing up. No? There isn't. Oh, I'm going to pick on you. What jersey do you have?
I have a Bo Nix Broncos jersey.
Oh, okay. Are we cheering? I have no idea. What about you, Lewis?
Orioles, Baltimore
Oh,
Orioles.
I've heard of them. That's cool. Yay! Okay. Okay, you can all sit down. Are we done? Great.
Just gotta close the.
Yeah, and that last one. Oh, it's so stressful. Yeah.
You seem very calm now. You're doing a great job.
You have to hit jersey.
Okay.
Barbara,
So,
do you
yeah,
have a jersey? Do you own a jersey?
Oh yeah, do you?
Yeah, nobody else me. Yeah, I own a jersey. I own two jerseys. I own a 2016 Leicester City football shirt because they won the Premiership in 2016. No Brits in the room. But the main reason why I own it is because my father-in-law gave it to me on my wedding day and insisted that I wore it and when they took the photograph of us cutting our wedding cake. So it's kind of really sad that I don't have a picture of me in my pretty dress. I have a picture of me in my football jersey. Okay, so I know I have a very sad life. So we're going to have time for questions from the floor, but before that, I just have a couple of things I wanted to ask our amazing panel. Before I do that, can I just ask you to give a round of applause for these people? They are so cool. And those were just great, clear, incisive presentations. I mean, people that speak to the brief, that's just really amazing. So my first question is for Sasha and Ruthie. And it's about RBF implementation. So one of the problems with, well, one of the great things about RBF is it makes you count the thing you're interested in, right? The number of people with a service. But I've heard, you know, back in my days, particularly at the World Bank, I've had government clients say to me quite often, oh, you know, this is an awful lot of M&E that you're asking us to do. And I always find that quite interesting because it kind of sheds a light on the amount of M&E that we should actually do, right? So I just wondered if either of you have a reflection on how excited or frustrated or alarmed your government counterpart colleagues were when you were kind of negotiating the RBF arrangement and talking about the M&E requirements. Any just thoughts on that?
I will say a word. Is this working? Or maybe I just, can you hear me?
I don't think you should do that because there's an online audience.
Oh,
We need
so
the
don't
mic to work.
just yell like
You might need to
hello.
switch it on.
Hello? How's
Yeah,
this?
now,
Okay. We'll just go like this. This is actually, everything is very interesting, very serendipitous timing right now because tomorrow morning the government is going to be speaking with IDB and the verification firm, who are a local verification firm, to give their questions about exactly this, the verification protocol. And I would say the government was delighted that there was going to be an external firm that was Haitian that was doing it. They were also delighted that IDB Lab was going to be paying for that firm. That was excellent. So that takes a bit of it off their shoulders, but they're still having this debate of to what extent do we need to go and then re-verify what the verification firm has already done. And I think that's what tomorrow's discussion is about. And what we have said is the current verification protocol, if it doesn't get changed tomorrow, says that payment is not tied to government visits. However, we will open up our books to them and anyone that they want to visit. It's an open door policy, which it's always been an open door policy. And that, I think it will feel good in the sense that it will allow them to do the amount of M&E that they want, but also not be forced to and not hold up payments. And they have this external firm that they can hopefully count on to give them that.
Great, thank you.
I unfortunately was not in the room for those conversations, but what I will give a plug for is that for many years, FreshLife, with our kind of robust M&E function, that we were keeping track of a lot because we wanted to know it, and it felt for years like we were almost punished because we knew our detailed costs. But the flip side of that is that I won't underestimate the work that it took to get into reporting for RBF, but I think we were in a really, really good position to start reporting on these metrics in a way that is sufficiently credible and robust for our two governing structures because we were already doing it. And so I think over here where we got a little bit of advocacy for knowing your costs and keeping track of them, in addition to letting you make decisions about your business, it also could set you up to be pretty ready to start implementing RBF. So no comment on the government reaction, but a plug for it.
Can I ask Kate a kind of follow-up question? I thought it was very interesting. I mean, I feel your pain that you wanted to work with your other kind of colleagues in the sector and you weren't able to. I wanted to ask you if you have a sense of the extent to which that's driven by, on the one hand, kind of squeamishness or sort of unwillingness, or alternatively, to some extent, just by a lack of competence and sort of understanding of what you're asking them to do. I mean, there's two kind of possible reasons. One is a very sort of adverse, rather sinister reason not to want to share your costs, and the other is just a sort of slightly sort of rabbit in the headlights response, like we don't know how to do it. So what's your sense of?
So I think there was a lot of different reasons. One was just bandwidth, like, is this going to be so much work, and anything that's extra to what we're doing also is a cost that we have to fundraise for to be able to pay these staff. So I know for some organizations that was a big thing, and actually I'm happy to share that one of our peer organizations is now open to sharing their cost data for kind of the next round of this. So we're super excited. That came out of this weekend. We had a chat about it. I'll call up Joe from Safe Water Network, very excited. But what we requested was that you send your financial statements. You send your P&L unfiltered with our independent team, and I do think that some people were squeamish about that. There are plenty of service providers that are sharing their own profit data, but weren't willing to give us a peek behind the door about what was included or not included in those numbers. And I think there was some squeamishness from some around that.
I mean, it's a normalization of this, right? Trying to get to the point where there's a general expectation that this is good sector behaviour.
Yeah.
I have a question for Mike. I have actually just a question of fact. My first question was, you mentioned your RBF stream of revenue. Could you just clarify for us, where's that coming from? Is that government funding?
No, it was from an organization called Uptime.
Ah, okay. Yeah. Excellent. Big shout out to Uptime. We love them. Can I ask you then, just a follow-up question is, what's Uptime's kind of skin in the game there? What was their motivation to bring that funding stream to you?
I think Uptime had different motivations. One of them was to be efficient in the way we support the sector. So I believe working with existing operating organization in the field and give them this little push by the RBF would be more efficient than creating new projects. And the aim of Uptime was, as they keep on doing, and this is what they are developing now, it's to go with the government and to convince government. But they add also another one is to bring non-conventional donors of the water sector into supporting operators, and that was a bit more difficult.
No, interesting. Yeah, thank you. I'm going to pause my questions for a minute, and I'm going to open up to the floor. But before we do that, I need to just do a team activity. Is it possible for us to see the chat of the meeting? Because I think it may be possible for our online colleagues to post questions in the chat, and we could maybe just share the chat up there, and then we can keep an eye on any chat comments. But I will. Yeah, get me.
It was just my husband's there. I don't know what he might say.
Do you want me to text my husband and speak to your, keep him distracted? Yeah, I can do that. Okay, any questions from the room? I'm going to very rudely preference people in the room just while we sort out the admin. Oh my goodness, now we can see ourselves, that's terrible.
Only you, only you.
No, all of us.
Oh no, only you can see it.
Oh, good, okay, only I can see it, that's marvellous. Anybody, yes, please go ahead. Now you may need a mic, we may need a microphone for people in the room, just again for our online friends. Sorry, Lena. Run around.
It's a workout for them.
Yeah. She doesn't need a workout, unfortunately.
Send one of us.
Thanks, everybody.
Yeah, that's good reading it, yeah.
I'm Rachel Peltz with the Core Institute, and this has been fantastic, really interesting discussion, and thanks so much. I wanted to ask, so I think this problem of if the costs are not fully recovered by customer fees is not necessarily new, but one thing I did want to just touch on was, so, you know, results-based funding is seen right now, or is being presented as a new thing. And so I wanted to just touch on the fact that that's not actually a new revenue stream, as far as I understand it. You guys are nodding, which is good, that I have my understanding correct. So I just wanted to touch on that, if you can talk about that. It seems like that is a new way to get government funding, potentially, but I just wanted to touch on that, or ask you to reflect on that, as like that as a solution versus other mechanisms to bridge that gap between customer fees and actual costs.
Great question, and very much to the point. There was one more question. Let's take a couple. I think Bethlehem was actually first, right in front of you. Oh, bad luck, Bethlehem, you missed out there. Go ahead. Yeah, go on. We'll be efficient. Go on.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
Will from SOJ, and Echo, excellent session. This is really useful. I think we're involved in a uptime supported pilot in a country that will remain nameless, right? And I think this point's about you talk about like area-wide and technology mix. We shouldn't take for granted. That's the main thing I took out of this, because I think in some countries a focus is on a particular technology for a solution on hand pumps, for example, and separating those, or for only rural, remote areas. And also a potential, if it's an area-wide sort of results-based funding or incentivizing area-wide services, then you shift away from just incentivizing the most functional or easy to maintain water points. And so I think I really wanted to just echo that the area-wide technology mix, great, but we can't take that for granted, particularly in many countries which don't have the regulatory frameworks for area-wide services. Thanks.
Yeah, and
So
also,
more of an observation than a
yeah,
question.
but also maybe also have a little bit of a hangover from the sort of projectized development strategies, which tend to often are sort of uni technology. Given that that was a comment and we all nodded and agreed, and we don't need to respond, let's give Bethlehem a question.
Thank you, and thank you to the presenters. This was awesome. It was super interesting. My name is Bethlehem. I'm from Agenda for Change, and I have seen results-based financing or funding being implemented in several countries, and it's very effective around driving performance, but sometimes it can also focus on incentivizing short-term outputs, and that worries me a little bit. And so I'd love to hear from you how your organizations are ensuring results-based financing can also contribute to long-term system strengthening. Things like building local government capacity, strengthening monitoring systems, ensuring financial sustainability beyond the contract period. I'd be really grateful to hear your thoughts on. I'm particularly interested in how RBF can transition from a project mechanism to something embedded within long-term public financing or service delivery systems. So if you have any thoughts on that, we'd be happy to hear them.
Yeah, I think those two questions actually fit together really nicely, and I think everybody here would echo your anxiety, and I think definitely not in project mode, but more in long-term. So I don't know who wants to go first. Let's start with Kate, because otherwise she has to wait for a time. Not you.
So I was very excited about your question, Rachel, because it's something we're thinking a lot about, and I had all these slides that I have no time to talk about that are at the end of that presentation. So we were looking at Ghana's budget for rural water supply from 2024 to 2027, It was via the Ministry of Sanitation and Water Resources, which no longer exists, so it might not be relevant, but it's helpful for context. And for rural water management, that budget was $160 million over that time period. That Saha does not receive any government funding via RBF, so that $10 million, like either things that are in that budget need to get a whole lot more efficient to make room for any sort of new payment, or we need a bigger budget in some way to pay for it. And one of the things that getting real honest about your cost allows you to do is to then actually start thinking about really practical solutions. Me and some of my other crazy implementers love this idea of creating district level endowment funds for these types of costs that are recurring, that are predictable. We know they will come up over and over again, and we know that that financing gap is going to remain between what the poorest people can afford to pay and what it costs to serve them, not just in low-income countries, but in countries all over the world. There is a gap between that. And so we think that it is a time to start getting really innovative about financial solutions. RBF is not a financial solution. It is a way to deliver payments to ensure reliable services. So if anyone would like to talk to me about crazy ideas for getting funds endowed to cover long-term recurring costs, I'd love to talk to you about them. I have a blog post out right now, and we are going to pilot something at a small scale next year.
Can I just chip in as well? I mean, on just your first point, not the endowment fund, just by chance in the Cactus project, we've also looked at a bunch of other projects, and in Ruthie's country, we looked at some of the utility service providers who had borrowed money from multilateral financial institutions to construct sewered wastewater systems, which, you know, perfectly fine, not a problem, nice mix of technology, but those systems are running at 10% connectivity. So their cost liability, if you include the amortized capital, is coming out at about $6,000 per household per year. So you want to free up some revenue and some funding. The first thing I would say is let's get all those people connected and let's start charging them for the service. So I feel like we often talk about the government budget as if it's tiny and constrained and there's nothing left. But we really have to ask about utilization as well and efficiency within that budget. I think it's super important.
And just to quickly add on, one of the things that's difficult about not having everybody be transparent about their costs and revenue is, like, at these high-level sector meetings in Ghana, there's so much talk about the potential of cross-subsidization from more profitable areas, but it's all just in theory. Like, Uduma is the same service provider serving all of those people. In Ghana, it's different service providers, and it's a nice idea, but there'll have to be regulation to make that happen. It's not this magic revenue stream that there's this secret profitable rural customer base that just, like, once we get them, all the books are going to balance out. Like, there's no data that actually shows that yet. So we all need to share it.
And I'll add on, I think, to both what Rachel and Bethlehem were saying. And I mean, this was when we were planning for this session, Barbara did say, you do realize this is not like new funding coming out. No, you're just using it differently. And I thought, oh, yeah, I mean, I did know that, but I think I sometimes forget it and think, oh yeah, results-based financing. But I think that it does unlock new types, new sources of funding, at least for small providers like us. I mean, we, for years, have watched hundreds of millions of dollars go into the wash sector in Haiti from development banks. And small providers have no way of accessing that funding. And so it was this exercise in what would it take to actually build a mechanism that would allow not only us, but hopefully in the future also small providers to break in to that big funding. But when we talk to the government about it, you know, I say, oh, it's a $125 million grant, it's so much money. And they said, you know, it's so much and it's also not enough. Right, so it's not enough for us to put in the infrastructure we need to put in, but it is way more than you need to provide the services. But the way, my understanding, that these contracts between development banks and the government are often is that there's sort of a part that the development banks hang on to that's for technical assistance, and there's a part that goes to the government. My understanding is that these technical assistance grants can be very, very large and can often be repeated studies that have been done before, that never come out, that never really get to the government. And so the government said, that we really want to fund you. Please don't take our infrastructure money. Could you take some of the money that's going to consultants to do studies that we didn't ask for? So once again, sort of to your point of, there is money out there that's not being used well, and perhaps through results-based financing, we can find a way to access it and use it better. And then Bethlehem, I feel like you answered your own question. Was the thing, it was so good, it was you asked about short-term outputs, but what's the systems change? And then you gave the answers, which were building up government capacity, strengthening those systems so that it's much easier and those M&E costs go down, and then creating those template contracting structures for governments and testing them to see how they work. So I think those are all the sort of system change things. And
How to say that? Definitely, RBF is just a way of being effective in supporting what is necessary as a private operator. You need flexibility. You need to be able to find a way to achieve your goal in this difficult context. So not to being too rigid, etc. So the important thing is to sit down and have the right objectives. And this is something you should negotiate, not being imposed. And this is the whole point, is to open the conversation. Open the conversation with the government, because they usually don't really know what are the realities. When we started the business 10 years ago, the expected consumption level was 25 liters per day per person. The reality is 5. So we are far from what we thought, what experts thought. So there are now many models. They have been reaching a level of maturity that tells us there are things that can do the job. It's telling governments that, what do you want to achieve? What is your objective? And start from there. And from there you go backwards. And if you want to achieve this objective in that environment, then the best model for you is this one. Whether it is private, whether it is not private, whether it is operators, whatever. It's just trying to build this confidence, and we have to make efforts to have credibility in what we produce, and government has to make effort in starting to listen. And the best way to be considered is when they design the programs, when they design the strategy. Not during, it's too late. Once it is started, it is very difficult to get in. So the earlier we get in, the earlier we are efficient in designing something that can last.
Can I interject? Can you hold your response
Sure.
for a minute? Because you may be able to answer this question at the same time. So there's a question online. I haven't forgotten, Nat, that you waved your hand at me. A question from Stephen Senna online. Thanks so much. Great presentation and discussion. I mean, obviously he was listening to some other presentations clearly. So no, I'm joking. In case any of you didn't
She had to clarify.
Yeah, I have to clarify. So this is the question. When seeking government funding for RBF, well, the question that Stephen asks is, do you primarily look for funds for CapEx or OpEx? But I'd actually like to spread that question slightly and say, do you think your government counterparts have a bigger appetite for either CapEx or OpEx? I noticed that you have outputs that fall in both those spaces. Is there one particularly that you feel is easier to explain or is more appealing, or any thoughts on the blend of CapEx and OpEx outputs?
Now this microphone is a hot potato that nobody wants.
It's a great question.
Yeah. I had an answer prepared for the other question.
Well, you can answer the other question if you like.
I'll
The
start
other-
with that.
Yeah, and the
give
others
you
can
all a
think
chance
about
to
it.
think.
Yeah.
I wanted to just note, I guess, just 2 quick things to add. Bethlehem, to your question, I think one of the things that I'm really pleased about with our metrics is that we have both the number of new toilets launched and the total number of toilets active in our network. And so that's one way that we've built in kind of a longer term, more of a long-term perspective, that if we intentionally set it up so that if we just launch a lot of toilets that are not going to succeed, we will pay for it, or we will not be paid for it. And then Rachel, in terms of the question of sort of like why this versus another kind of funding, or another mechanism, another new shiny wrapper for the same money. And I would kind of just emphasize this idea of like a practice round, that it's a practice round for us to, it's sort of taking the kind of money that we've had historically and asking it to dress up in a costume of the kind of money we want to get later. And so, yeah, like the funders are the same funders, but they're not giving us our money until after we do what we say we will do. And that's really important. And I think the idea is like, it's not new money, but if we go through this practice round, then we should be positioned to take a different kind of money, and that hopefully that will be different money. Yes.
I'll say a word because I do think it was a very, very long road for us to get to getting that contract today. I mean, 7 years of discussions about results-based financing. So it took a lot of time, and I think that my sense is both the development banks and the government would prefer to pay for CapEx because the aspiration is infrastructure, right? So government, politically, they need to work towards the aspiration of their constituencies, and that is to have networked services. And so I think for that reason, you know, these loans and these grants are usually targeted at putting in infrastructure. And so it has been a very hard discussion to say, is it possible in the next round of developing the next program to have a percentage of that go towards services? Because I am not an expert on all of these different development bank and government partnerships, but my understanding is that often the services are not wrapped in, and I think the push for the CapEx is just the aspiration that people have to have networked services.
I agree, and we all know that SDGs are all focused on access, so that naturally led to incentives around expanding infrastructure and new water points. But I also think as service providers, we have to take some accountability to the ecosystem that we have all contributed in. And I think a lot of us all started with dreams of being social enterprises that could fully cover our cost. And I remember sitting at UNC decades ago, and all of us were talking about, well, in 10 years, this is when we're going to start making a profit from providing this essential service, and here's how it's all going to work out. So our government partners were hearing us say that. So I think they weren't worrying about OpEx as much because we were telling them not to worry about it. We got this. Like social enterprise is going to solve all of the world's problems. And so we helped create this ecosystem that we're living in, and now we have to be just as loud about like, oops, we made a mistake. That wasn't like when Saha tried to operate like a social enterprise, no one could afford our water, no one was drinking it, and we weren't gonna have any health impacts. Our water treatment centers stayed open, but they, you know, were selling tiny amounts of water. Once we made water affordable, now everyone's coming to get it, but it costs a lot more. But I do think because there's a bigger appetite around CapEx, that's why I get excited about ideas like endowments, because if you can understand what your long-term cost is going to be and what you're going to need to fund it, you could pitch OpEx like CapEx. You could say, for every new infrastructure project we develop, we have this financing gap that's not being met yet, and we need to contribute into a fund that's going to earn enough money to be able to cover this. Whether that's government contributing to that fund or government regulating that other people do, this idea is very, very early and in its infancy, but it gets a lot of excitement by packaging OpEx like CapEx.
Could you, Michael, I'm just going to hold on you for a minute. Lewis Twitch, someone?
Let Michael go.
Okay, but I just want to chip in, sorry, I just wanted to say one thing, because I also think as a sector, what your observation about the SDGs focusing on CapEx, I think that's also that's on us for not communicating well, because one of the things to bear in mind is the total number of people who have access to services is a function of all the new people who gained service and all the people whose services did not break down in the intervening period. And the fact that we don't communicate that fact better is a real problem for all of us, I think, because you're not going to achieve the SDGs if every single system you build breaks down after 3 years. You know, that's not how the maths work. And in fact, as we get closer to the end, that becomes more and more true. So I would argue that keeping what we have running is becoming, like, on the margin, the most important thing we have to do to get anywhere close to SDG targets. But it's a very hard case to make. I mean, it's really tough. Sorry, Mike, I interrupted.
I would be a bit more radical. There is no appetite for OPEX, or there has not been so far. But I'm optimistic, as you just said, because things are changing, and basically there is less free or cheap money. So governments start to realize they have to be more efficient with the money they have, and quickly realize that if they don't manage the OPEX, they have to rehabilitate.
Yeah.
So it's more expensive. So now they start to listen to it and to understand or to just open the subject and to have interest into what is possible. How can we start thinking about it? Of course, we are talking about governance. Of course, we are talking about IFIs. So all this is taking very long. But we have to keep fighting to make this change, and it's on the way.
Great. So I'm going to take, Lewis wanted to make an intervention, and Nat wanted to ask a question.
Do I need a mic?
Yeah, it's better if you just hold the mic, sorry.
Just two quick comments. One on the question from online. I completely agree with what Mikhail just said. I mean, it's always been about CapEx, and I appreciate social entrepreneurs taking ownership for that, but I mean, it was Raj Kumar who said in the plenary that you know, USAID was all about projects. And I mean, this is a long-standing problem in the development sector, and it's on the backs of the bilateral aid agencies, it's on the backs of the multilateral development banks, because they always talked about doing projects. And they talked really about the shiny new assets, and it was sort of that if you build it, they will come theory. Oh, we'll build it and somebody else will cover the operating costs. The sustainable development goals are meant to be about sustainable development. I hate the term access. I like the term sustainable services. If you focus on sustainable services, yes, you need the money for the CapEx, but you also need money to keep it running, which is the whole point of the session. Secondly, to Bethlehem's question, results-based funding is not a panacea. It is a tool that properly used, and I would say Uptime does a very good job of this. If you have the right set of criteria, then you are going to be providing incentives for sustainable service delivery. At the same time, one of the things Uptime realized was that there were not that many competent service providers that they could reach very large scale. Uduma is obviously a very good one. It's one of the reasons Uptime pivoted to what they call Uptime Global, where they're now engaging directly with governments. Ultimately, I think the answer is a combination. You clearly need where I live, I have a combination of a reasonable regulatory environment with a moderately competent service provider, and I pay my bill. And I think that's what most people want. So I don't think it's one or the other. I think you need a good enabling environment, and you need, and if you can do that and pay the money on an incentive-based payment where those incentives are aligned with what you're trying to achieve, that's really a good way to do it. And if somebody was here from the Hilton Foundation, they would mention that they're running an experiment in Uganda right now in one district where they are working with the government and getting advice from Uduma and from Instiglio and some others on trying to get the government in a position where it can manage a results-based funding approach. So ultimately, my guess is that's where we go. We need both of them.
Okay, thanks, Lewis. We're close to the end now. Nat gets a question.
Thank you. Very quick question on, Kate, I appreciate your transparency about the cost of fundraising as a part-time fundraiser. I think that's very important. And as I'm hearing more and more about results-based financing, it sounds like you're spending twice as much to cover the same cost. You have to raise money for the initial investment into it, and then you have to raise money to pay for that initial investment. And so I'm just curious if any of you or anyone in the room has tracked the costs of raising money for results-based financing.
They're high.
A short answer from Sasha, she volunteered.
Yes. So I think especially for organizations that are sort of pioneering this in the sector. I mean, I'm very grateful for the Osprey Foundation's belief that this is something that we can work on, and they've sort of walked with us on this path, and they know well that we kind of paid twice to design this because it took 7 years. So we did it at the beginning. We very much felt like because it's not business as usual, we needed the support of an external consultancy firm. And we've worked with several, both Social Finance UK and Livoca, and it's really been invaluable in terms of getting this off the ground. This is one of those things that we hope with time, those costs will go down and this will get easier. But we have to wonder if 5 years from now we'll be sitting here and saying, well, we still need those consultancy firms to do it. So I think that remains to be seen, but you're right. There was significant financial investment in the range of $100,000 that we've probably paid, possibly maybe even $150,000 over the last.
For how much raised?
For 3.5 million raised. So, but I mean that was in addition to our regular fundraising team and all of their activities to raise activity-based financing. So, but I think it was still a good ROI.
Yeah.
Osprey, thank you.
And just
money well spent.
Yeah, and just to chip in, I think the important thing to remember is if you do an input-based financing or activity-based financing, and you build a load of infrastructure which provides no services, if you ask what did it cost per person who receives a service, those numbers don't look so terrible, because we raise a lot of money to build infrastructure that serves nobody. So just to we have to be careful that we compare. Right, we're really close to the end, and I'm going to break all the rules of this conference by letting you all go, which means I'm sorry, I'm not going to give you a final word. I'm going to have a shot at saying the things I think they would say. Costs really matter. RBF has a lot of potential, but it's very risky if we get overexcited and try and do RBF before we understand the real cost, because we'll do it really badly. Underpowered RBF is worse than useless. And we would unwittingly anchor the cost too low and give a very low level of service. And I think Michael's example really shows that very nicely. There is no getting away from public funding. The government definitely needs to step in. What we're talking about here are ways of doing that as efficiently and as effectively as possible. And really transparency and consistency in reporting costing is something we've got to get better at. This is a professionalization issue for all of us in the sector. I have one more stand up, sit down for you, so all stand up.
I know.
And I'm going to ask you to stay on your feet if you think that after this session in your life you might try and be encouraging your colleagues or friends or service providers or funders to encourage everybody to be more transparent about their costs. If you think it's a bad idea, you can sit down. Oh. That was a loaded question. You all did very well. Thank you so much, and thanks to our
Really kept us in line. Here, Sasha, there's a question specifically for you in the chat. Take a look.
No, it's sent to you separately, but basically Stephen said... Nailed it.
Let me take a picture of that for you?
Yeah, a little, I mean, yeah.